Let me set the scene for you. It's a Saturday evening. I know this because I checked my phone, not to see if he texted, but because I had a 5 o'clock appointment with my attorney. And while I'm sitting across a mahogany desk, initialing page after page of a settlement agreement, he is 40 minutes across town, at a rooftop bar, raising a glass of Veuve Clicquot with her. I know this because his location was still shared with me. He forgot to turn it off, which, honestly, was the nicest thing he'd done for me in years. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that 18 months ago, I was a woman who didn't know what a QDRO was. Didn't know what dissipation of marital assets meant, and genuinely believed that the life I had built, with my bare hands, my income, my sacrifices, was safe. I was wrong. And then I got educated. And that is the story I'm here to tell you today. We met in our late 20s. He was charming in that way that exhausts you to describe. The kind of man who walks into a room and seems to fill it. I was impressed. I was young. I was not yet wise enough to know that men who fill rooms often do so by taking up all the oxygen. Me got married after 2 years. I had a career. I was in marketing, climbing, not flying, but climbing. He was in sales, which meant his income looked spectacular in the good months and invisible in the bad ones. I was stable, he was exciting. And for a long time I confused exciting with good. Early on, I made a decision, quietly, the way women make 1,000 decisions quietly, to slow down my career trajectory. Not stop. Slow down. Because someone had to be home when the kids were sick. Someone had to manage the household logistics, the calendars, the teachers, the doctors, the repairs, the meals, the emotional labor that doesn't show up anywhere on a balance sheet. That someone was me. I gave up a promotion in 2017. I turned down a conference in London. I declined a job offer that would have put me in a VP role 2 years earlier than I got there. Because he said the timing wasn't right. The kids were too young. We weren't ready. We weren't ready. I was ready. He just didn't want the inconvenience of my ambition. The cracks don't appear all at once. That's the thing nobody tells you. It's not a dramatic moment. It's a slow accumulation of small moments that you explain away, one by one, until you've explained away years. He started working late. And I mean, I knew. I knew in the way that your body knows before your brain admits it. My stomach knew. My nervous system knew. I was just bargaining, telling myself stories. Because the alternative, the truth, required a reckoning I wasn't ready for yet. Then came the discovery. I won't get into specifics because, frankly, the how doesn't matter. What matters is that on a Tuesday in November, I found enough to know. And I sat with it for 3 days before I said a single word. Because I had seen enough stories online, heard enough from friends to understand one very important thing. The moment he knows you know, the clock starts. Assets can move. Accounts can change. Behavior can shift. Evidence can disappear. So I said nothing. For 72 hours I made his coffee. I asked about his day. I passed the salt at dinner. And underneath that completely ordinary surface, I was doing the most extraordinary thing I had ever done in my life. I was planning. The first call I made was not to my best friend. It was not to my mother. It was to a family law attorney, a woman specifically, who had been recommended to me by another woman, who had been recommended by another woman. You know, how that network works. The one we've been quietly building for each other. Her first question was not, "Are you sure?" Her first question was, "Have you made copies of your financial documents?" I had not. So that became my weekend. I want to pause here and speak directly to anyone who might be in that grey zone right now. That place where you're not sure. where you're still hoping, where you're telling yourself maybe you're wrong. Document everything before you need it. You can always choose not to use it, but you cannot unlose evidence that's gone. So I spent 2 weekends photographing statements, bank accounts, retirement accounts, both of ours, his business expenses, credit card records going back 3 years, the car titled in the business name that he drove personally, the work trip receipts that had restaurant charges for 2 in cities where he claimed to be dining alone. I built a folder, and then I gave a copy to my attorney, and then I moved my direct deposit, quietly, legally, within my rights, to an individual account. And then I waited. I gave it 30 more days, not because I was uncertain, because I was strategic. When I finally told him I knew, I want you to picture the least dramatic version of that scene possible, because that's what I chose. No screaming. No throwing things. No tearful confrontation in the kitchen. I handed him a single piece of paper. It was a copy of my attorney's contact card, with a note that said, "I think it's time. I've retained counsel. You should too." He stared at it for a long moment, and then he looked up at me with this expression. This offended expression, like I was the one who had done something wrong by being prepared. He said, "I didn't think you'd do this." And I said, "I know." And I walked out of the room. Now, here's where I want to be honest with you. Divorce is not a glow-up montage. It is paperwork and mediation, and days when your kids look at you with eyes that break your heart, and nights when you question every decision you ever made. But here is also what those months were. Clear. For the first time in a very long time, I knew exactly who I was and exactly what I was fighting for. That clarity, I had forgotten what it felt like. My attorney was the kind of woman who uses the word aggressive as a compliment when describing legal strategy. She looked at my documentation and she said, "He spent 3 years funding a lifestyle that wasn't yours. We're going to make sure it's factored into what's yours now. There's a concept in divorce law called dissipation of marital assets. It means that when one spouse uses marital funds for purposes that benefit only them, and not the marriage, those funds can be accounted for in the settlement. Those restaurant receipts, the hotel stays, the gifts he bought with our joint account, every single one of them went into a spreadsheet. His business, the one he'd built during our marriage, the one I had supported by managing our household so he could work 70-hour weeks without worrying about a single school pickup. That was a marital asset. He had assumed I would be too emotional, too overwhelmed, too eager to just get it done to fight for what I was actually entitled to. That assumption cost him. Sitting across the table in mediation, watching his attorney's face as my attorney laid out the documentation, watching his face as he realized the scope of what I had. Silently, carefully, over all those months, assembled. I thought about that rooftop bar. I thought about the Veuve Clicquot. I didn't smile, but I thought about smiling. My attorney was the kind of woman who uses the word aggressive as a compliment when describing legal strategy. She looked at my documentation and she said, "He spent 3 years funding a lifestyle that wasn't yours. We're going to make sure it's factored into what's yours now. There's a concept in divorce law called dissipation of marital assets. It means that when one spouse uses marital funds for purposes that benefit only them, and not the marriage, those funds can be accounted for in the settlement. Those restaurant receipts, the hotel stays, the gifts he bought with our joint account, every single one of them went into a spreadsheet. His business, the one he'd built during our marriage, the one I had supported by managing our household, so he could work 70-hour weeks without worrying about a single school pickup. That was a marital asset. He had assumed I would be too emotional, too overwhelmed, too eager to just get it done to fight for what I was actually entitled to. That assumption cost him. Sitting across the table in mediation, watching his attorney's face as my attorney laid out the documentation, watching his face as he realized the scope of what I had. Silently, carefully, over all those months, assembled. I thought about that rooftop bar. I thought about the Veuve Clicquot. I didn't smile, but I thought about smiling. Back to that Saturday. It's 5 o'clock. I'm at my attorney's office. The final settlement agreement is in front of me. 43 pages. I initial every page. And with every initial, I am signing away the version of my life that was built around someone else's happiness. The house, we agreed to sell it. The retirement accounts, split. With a legal instrument called a QDRO that I didn't know existed 2 years ago and could now explain in my sleep. The business valuation settled in my favor by enough that my attorney told me to go get a nice dinner after. I signed the last page at 5:47 p.m. At 5:52, I checked my phone. His location showed him still at the rooftop bar. And I didn't feel the triumph I expected. I didn't feel rage or vindication or any of the feelings I've been carrying around like heavy luggage for 18 months. I felt light, like something had been set down, like I could breathe all the way to the bottom of my lungs for the first time in years. My attorney handed me a copy of the signed agreement and shook my hand. She said, "Go live your life." I went and got that dinner, alone, and it was the best meal I can remember eating. I'm telling you this story not because I want you to hate him. I genuinely don't. He's the father of my children and hatred is expensive. It costs too much of your own time and energy. I'm telling you this story because I spent years being someone who made herself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. And I want you to know, the smallness is reversible. If you are sitting somewhere right now in a situation that feels like mine, get a notebook. Learn what's in every account with your name on it. Know what your household spends. Know what you'd need if you had to stand on your own. Not because you're planning to leave, but because knowing is not a threat to a good marriage. And if knowing is a threat, if the idea of you being informed makes someone uncomfortable, then you already have your answer. I am on the other side now. I won't pretend it was easy to get here. But I am here. My name is on accounts that are only mine. My future is mine to build. And somewhere across town, a man is on his second glass of Veuve. I hope he enjoys it. Because the real tab has been settled. Let me know if you'd like any section expanded, tightened, or adjusted in tone.